So now we're ready for phase 3, which is getting more into those details like the arrow we just created and figuring out, should our font be slanted? Should it be closer, further apart? Font pairing. This is where we're going to be exploring those different type choices and arrangements. We also have to work in the word video. So we have 2 words here. Let's do some font pairing to see if having some different font styles will help really let this logo stand out. So we're going to type in video here. And we got to work this word into this logo somehow. So the most important word of this will be flux, because that's going to be what's going to be the most memorable part of this name. Video is video. It's not a throwaway word. It's still important to the logo and identifying the company name. But if the company is eventually going to be known as Flux, and that's how people are going to shorten it, it doesn't have to be quite as big. So when we think about the concept and what the client wants and what they showed us, that can definitely help direct how we make the size and what font choices we choose. The examples that they've shown us are very simple typefaces. They're sans serif, they're not really fancy, so we need to find something that's really simple as well. So let's kind of find a right size. If we can always use the grid, and you have this nice spacing that's created, have this lowercase f, and look at this wonderful spacing that's left over. This would be a great place to put the word video. So we're going to kind of put it right here. And I'd love it to extend out a little bit more so it's not so condensed, because we have a very nice condensed typeface here. There's not a whole lot of huge gaps or spacing. So what if we put a little more spacing on the paired font to have contrast between the two? One's tighter, one's looser. So I'm going to change the tracking. Let's try 200 for now. And I'm getting an idea for size and spacing before I start to mess with font choices. So zoom out, do a visibility test at all times. Can I read it? Can I read video? Can I read flux? How are things looking in terms of being able to be looked at a very small size? So far it checks out. And I like how we have this nice thick typeface, and then video can be a little bit more slender and thinner. Once again, contrast works really well with font pairing. So if I had a bold typeface for video, let's see if I can find that. So let's say I use the same typeface I used as my base font for Flux. So you'll notice that they kind of compete with each other, and I can zoom out so you can see. They're kind of competing a lot because it's the same thickness throughout the whole entire logo. But when you make it thinner, it kind of helps break up those 2 words for you to make it a little more readable. So let's find a good typeface here. And this is when, if we find something we like, we can start to make different iterations or versions of that. So I'm just going to take this hold down option, shift it over, and continue as I find different ones I think could fit. And this process can be repeated over and over, as many as you feel like would fit. We're going to eliminate a lot of these quickly. So feel free to try out as many as possible. We're going to eliminate these very quickly. A few of these I did just to show you examples of bad type pairing or font pairing. So let's go ahead and zoom in. You can see how just a slight change in that video typography changes the entire feeling of the logo. Some of these work really well, some of them do not. So this one on the top right, it has this kind of playful handwritten typography, but you have this very stable, thick text, and it doesn't really go together. They're conflicting styles. So we can just easily eliminate some of these. Same thing with this. We have this nice, thick, bold typeface, and we have another thick, bold typeface, but it's just different enough for them to not flow very well together. They're fighting and competing against each other, so you can easily eliminate that. We have this sans serif, or the serif typeface, paired with a sans serif typeface, which normally with headlines and magazine covers and a lot of different graphic design things can look really good. But for this logo, it just seems a little bit inconsistent, because this seems very traditional and high-end, and this seems more casual and fun. So once again, they're just not pairing well together. Same thing for this one. This one has almost a childlike curves, and it's not going with, it's got more dramatic curves than the ones we created, and they're fighting against each other and competing. So easy to eliminate some of these. The spacing here bothers me, so I'm just going to bring it down. But you have this very tall typography with this very kind of normal height typography, I guess you could say. And those are fighting against each other again. We have this one, and this kind of has this slab serif kind of look. So you have these chunky slabs. And once again, you have almost this conflicting styles here as well. Because you think of that newspaper and different things when I think of a slab serif like this. So we're left with just two more, and I definitely kind of know the one on the bottom is going to be a better fit because it's thin. It's got some roundness to it, but it's also thin enough to have enough contrast between the two. It's a very simple style too. Let's eliminate that, and we kind of have our typeface chosen. Ends up being quicksand. So we have quicksand, and we have this antique typeface. So we're kind of picking out what our font pairings are going to be, and we can figure out sizes of video a little bit later. I'm liking how this is coming together, but we need to really assess everything about it. So we have our arrow. I like the position of that. We have some nice font pairing going on. We were able to work in that second word. But what can we do to make this more, have more movement and have more character? Because right now it seems good, but it's missing an element of motion, movement, youth, and we need to incorporate that somehow. So let's create some different versions to see if we like it this way, or maybe even slightly slanted to show movement. So this is part of the concept process. In my sketch, you could see how I tried some more angled typography, and I want to kind of try that here in Adobe Illustrator as well, because those came up in my sketches. Once again, another reason why to go back to your sketches and see if you were starting to work on kind of some styling there, how we can do that in Adobe Illustrator. So in this case, I want to slant everything, not video, but just flux. So let's use our warp tools. We're going to go up to Object, Envelope Distort, and we can see if we have a default warp option, but let's make with mesh. And let's do a very, very simple mesh. Just 1 point for row and column, and we could preview that. Let's get our direct selection tool and just kind of select this one and shift it over. And let's line that up. Let's make this a nice straight bend. Let's do the same angle here. Nice straight bend, just so adjusting this warp. And kind of have to adjust our other typography here. So I think that added a lot more motion to everything. So you can kind of see before, and we can compare after. So right here we have before and after. I don't have the arrow on the top one, but you can kind of get an idea of the basic typography. And I definitely think the one down below is the way to go. And this is how you slowly refine your logo. It's one stage at a time. It's one change at a time. So you notice how we spent some time on font pairing, and now we're spending time on style, and then we're going to be spending time on color. So all these come in stages. You can't do all of this at one time because you have to process each stage to make it more digestible for you as a creator. You're not like, what colors do I choose? You don't worry about that yet. Just do this one step at a time and eliminate ideas that aren't working and keep the ideas that are working. That's the whole idea of this entire worksheet, is to take a lot of ideas, find out the ones that work, refine them, continue to refine them, eliminate things all the time so you can get to that final logo concept that you need. That's all what we're trying to do. And right here you can kind of see, this is on the worksheet that you can download, is just playing around. I also decided to eliminate the left arm just to try a different version. Why not? And I realized it looked like an upside down J, and it wasn't really working really well because the F no longer became an F. Since we already changed the right side of the F, when we eliminated the left side of the F, it started to lose its identity as an F. So I quickly was able to eliminate that idea. I also changed the size of the arrow because I felt like the arrow wasn't coming out enough. So the big size made it look kind of clunky, and I decided to eliminate that option as well. I also decided to put spacing, so instead of having that overlapping arrow that we had in the first version, I wanted to create some spacing so that it didn't overlap, and that ended up being a mistake because now the F is all by himself over to the left, and there's just way too much inconsistency with spacing that I had to eliminate that option as well. And we also need to explore this second concept. So that was the first concept we've been working on, and now we have this idea of the arrow. There's this natural, wonderful white space that's created between the U and the X, and I wanted to explore that. So I combined the U and the X as one character and filled it in with just a simple shape over top that will eventually punch out. So then I tried different positionings, and so I decided, well, instead of just putting it where everybody would expect it, what if I put it also one on the outside to create kind of this double arrow movement to the right? And I decided it might be a little busy that way, and the fact that you have an arrow pointing this way and then arrow pointing that way, this part bothered me because I felt like there was this pull of direction to the left and to the right. It didn't feel smooth. It felt conflicting. So then I reversed it and said, okay, well, let me go with the movement. But now we have arrows going left and right, and it starts to lose the idea of being a play button, because a play button only exists pointing to the right. It doesn't really exist pointing to the left unless you want to go reverse. And so I just wanted to keep it just as one arrow. And so I went with what was my first idea, and that's okay. That was part of my sketch, and that's okay if you didn't evolve it anymore. That's okay. I think it worked the way I sketched it out. So we have these two concepts now, and you can see the refinement process, how we slowly worked through some ideas, made things bigger, spacing, to be able to come with something that I think we can refine to the next level.